Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tom. Man, that sounds good every time it rolls off your tongue. President and CEO
Yes,
of Make It Plain Consulting.
That's been a dream for a lot of my life, Eric. You know, even working with other companies,
Right.
I always wanted to be a CEO, even if I had to name myself the CEO. But this is a dream come true. I'm living a life. I'm living a life with my brother and my friend, Eric Ellis, and all the blessings that I would like to say publicly that I continue to receive from Eric, particularly last evening. So thank you, my friend.
We had ourselves a good time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, Eric. Yeah, we did.
Man, that was amazing, man. It was an uplifting event. It felt like, in many ways, a coming out party from this pandemic. Tommy Lewis, his wife, and I joined a hall full of people that got a chance to participate in the Classical Roots series and concert down at the Symphony. Man, that was powerful, wasn't it?
It was powerful. It's a great opportunity here in the kind of the tri-state area in Cincinnati, in particular, where the Cincinnati Symphony is the symphony, just like many other symphonies across the U.S. and across the world. However, this event was particularly to African Americans in the historical biography of and the contributions of African Americans in songwriting, in orchestra and playwriting, if you will, and in song and music. And I learned a little bit last night as well. We had some artists and composers, African Americans, dating back to the 1800s. And I was floored.
Right.
You know, we being people, not just separating blacks from whites, but we in general are very powerful people.
Right.
And it was just the awful situation of slavery that wanted to divide, and racism that wanted to divide genius, if you will. And last night we saw and heard genius in its making.
Right. And the indomitable spirit of enslaved people coming right off the plantation, going into some of the brightest lights and the biggest stages in the world. And that's just powerful, man. So we were inspired. It was almost a spiritual event.
Yes.
And to see the one guest artist, and his little son, man, that was singing. Wasn't that just precious?
Oh, Eric, that was precious. He's going to be someone. His young son, father is already accomplished, but his young son had stage presence. He had timing, poise, maturity, and the voice to go with it. Right. Some of that is taught, I think, Eric, and some of that is learned. Is you're born with it. Right. Born with that gift. So it was an absolutely beautiful evening, and thank you for inviting me and my wife to join you.
Absolutely. And the tribute that they did to Charles Fold, I thought that they did a great job. The gentleman who sang there in the choir is always outstanding. And it's also just inspiring, empowering, motivating to see people of color, of all colors, coming together at an event like that. Man, it's like you see people that you hadn't seen in a while, and it feels like a much longer while. And we were in there mostly, people were there unmasked and just happy to smile with each other, and just, the fist bump has died down a little bit. People were hugging, we got quadruple vaccinations. I think, we boosted, 4 or 5 times over. So talk about your week, Tommy, before we bring up our guests, man. Just talk to me about how your week was.
My week was good and challenging at the same time.
Okay.
On the challenging side, Eric, the blessings that we continue to receive, it taxes kind of our time bandwidth, right? And so I
Absolutely.
find myself running out of time, trying to carve out as much time in a 24-hour day, literally, maximizing that at sometimes 16, 18 hours, on a day or two. But I will share with you that if it weren't for my team doing three things. One, trusting me and I'm trusting them, right? Two, having the expertise and the maturity to sometimes, answer problems without having to call me, getting my input, really keeping the company and the client in the forefront of our mind.
Right.
So the decisions that my team makes is for both parties,
Right.
right? And that's very, very important because we do have a brand and our companies and clients are expecting something.
That's right.
And then three, bringing their own flavor, their
Right.
own innovation and creativity.
Right.
Because I think the way I do, I've learned what I've learned, but it's not everything. And so I really depend on my team to think differently. I want to shout out one of my team members, Dr. Brittany Minchin.
Okay.
Dr. Minchin is a college professor. She's been with Make It Plain a few years. She has worked on a number of different projects, working with large clients and adults, all the way down to our kiddos in the school system.
Okay.
And she was able to really connect with one of our clients who's in the education space with not only anecdotal offerings, but also data.
Okay.
And they gravitated toward the data like it was no tomorrow. And I was like, this is data I don't have.
Right.
And hey, Eric, I pushed away from the table, threw my hands behind my head.
Right.
Like,
Say, I can kill. She's killing it.
Just go do it. Go do it. So it was great. It was great.
Well, that's excellent, Tommy. My week was great as well, man. I'm going to stay in the spirit of some of my team members getting it done. So I've got a client, Columbia Forest Products, and one of my senior consultants has been with us almost 25 years. Went to Oregon and took her husband with her, and he actually even had a chance to sit in on the session that she did, and the people loved him, and he got a chance to see his wife for the first time do her thing. Yeah. And that community, man, just took them under their arms, man. They gave them tours all around the plant, and then took them out, man, I think they went out to a bar and just had dinner and a bunch of fun, man. I was like, what? How did I miss that? But I'm just so glad when you've got team members that love what they do. They're passionate. And when the client sees them, sometimes they never need to see us, do they, Tommy?
Not at all.
And we're grateful for that, man. Yeah. The other place that, so I did a keynote address for the American Society of Microbiologists. And that was phenomenal. And I really challenged them because of the work that they do, that they've really got to lean into this unconscious bias space because there's a lot, I think, that they can add to our understanding of the kind of things that are affecting us on a daily basis, Tommy, that's driving division. So I had a chance to talk to them. They were very engaged, man. And we did about 3 hours that just blew by. So I enjoyed that. And the other thing I would say is, I want to almost title this, what happens when the CEO starts getting understanding?
Talk to me.
So I'm working with a client, man, where the CEO has gotten on fire around diversity. And he's gone as far as to develop a sort of personal, close, cultural informant relationship with an African-American employee that works there at the company. They've gone out to dinner with their wives. They're going to be exchanging visits at churches. And he's really leaning into them. He's doing a lot of tours, just spending more time with his people, getting out of the ivory tower, so to speak. And now he's also, Tommy, putting pressure on other leaders to get this done. 4 or 5 goals, tying this almost to your compensation and things like that, and now people are starting to scream back a little bit. And I'm just excited to see that kind of growth, Tommy, because it's not that often that we see these CEOs get their hands dirty in it and not just put a diversity manager or diversity champion on it, but decide to put their own thumbprint on this work. He and I, well, I won't get into it, but they're doing things around even non-binary staff individuals, trying to make restrooms available for them, just things that they were unthinkable for them a couple of years ago. They're doing compensation studies to rebalance that because of some of the work that we discovered when we work with them. So just excited about that, man. And we want to say welcome to our guests, our community that has shown up. Gary Dent, thank you. Worked at the University of Cincinnati. I know Dr. Martin is probably the reason why he's here today, but he's joined us before. Ken Wilson, somebody mentioned your name last night, and their son had played basketball with you, so we just sat around, had a great time, and so we're looking forward to this conversation today. And so without any further ado, I'm going to bring to the stage Dr. Robin Martin. Welcome. Good morning, sis. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Hello, Tommy. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Robin, good to see you. Good to see you.
I just couldn't believe that she even said yes, because I know how busy your schedule is.
It's crazy.
I asked the question. She said yes. I said, what do you say after they say yes? You know?
Well, it's early Saturday morning, so it's all good.
Right. Well, we are delighted to have you with us today. And I'm looking forward to a profound conversation because that's who you are. That's who I've known you to be. I'd like you to introduce yourself to our community and then just talk about your journey to where you are today. We're going to ask our community to weigh in. If you got questions, comments, you can make those. We'll post some of those along the way. But we want you to start by introducing yourself, and then we're going to talk about your book, Navigating Courage.
Okay, good. Robin Martin. I am formerly the Deputy Director of Strategy, Planning, and Management at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I am the CEO and President of Leading Beyond the Post, formerly Leading Beyond the Post, now Navigating Courage. Born in actually Ohio, but raised in Tennessee. Most people don't know that. Born in Cleveland and raised in Tennessee. I'm a former athletic director at Dillard University, spent 20 plus years in higher education in a number of different roles: athletic director, senior associate AD, SWA, the associate provost at one point, and then a tenure track faculty position at the University of Cincinnati. I've been in Cincinnati for now 12 years, just now coming back here over the last couple of months. So excited to be back in Ohio. Let's see, what else? I think that's it. I've been doing a mixture of leadership. So my doctorate degree is in educational leadership, and I study a humanist philosophy called Ubuntu, and thought about Ubuntu, it's an African philosophy, but thought about Ubuntu from a leadership paradigm and a humanist paradigm. And so much of what I talk a little bit about is really about how do you lead out of your own humanity? So how do you actually think about becoming a humanist leader and leading out of humanity? So it's a different way to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but particularly equity as we think about this humanist perspective as well. So.
Right. Well, here's the first question that is out there for you. But I would say even before that, Ken's a clown, so he's talking about your athletic career.
That's right.
Right. But I would say before that, talk about who your mother was and the lessons that you learned from her.
Yes, I talk a lot about this in my book. One of the things I do the tribute to her. One of the things I say in the book is, all mothers give birth, but my mother gave me freedom. And she allowed us to be free in a time that I think oftentimes we don't allow our kids to be fully free of just who they are and explore who they are in their whole humanity. Not absent discipline, not absent recourse for bad behavior, but really have this spirit of innovation and exploration, quite frankly. And so I talk a little bit about one example I give in the book is that I call them Trials by Gladys. Right. And so we would do something, and my mother loved to argue and ask people well, why did you do that? And then as of the why, so this art of questioning we developed very early on, and we would have to defend in some ways our position. And so what that did was it allowed us this feeling of curiosity that there was no one standard of truth, quite frankly, right? That we get to explore freely. Didn't cause us not to have our butts whipped, let's be really, really clear.
Right.
But you could at least have a voice around uh, the end result in a lot of ways. And so the shut up and do as I say kind of mentality, I think we stifle our children. And I'm grateful for my mother for giving me freedom. And so it's interesting as an adult, when I walk into these spaces of corporation and I'm the only Black female in the room, people always ask me, you just act so free.
Right.
And I've heard that so many times, and it's made me start to think about what if we all acted free? Like what does acting free look like for us as individuals? What would that look like? But that's a gift. I think that's a gift that I was given very early on. And what if we were all charged to give that gift to the young people that we are both that we have birthed and those that we are actually mentoring and on this own journey.
Yes.
Right.
So, yeah.
I'm going to say one other thing, then Tommy, I want you to feel free to jump in here. It almost brought tears to my eyes as I was reading parts of your book and realizing the challenge of being a Black female, brilliant leader
Right.
in male-dominated, often majority white organizations
Yeah.
that may not value who you are, and just all the energy that you have to pour into the question of how do I want to show up,
Yeah.
and the myth of meritocracy. The myths in many ways of liberalism and liberal leaders and their interest in diversity and inclusion
That's right.
is something that I was listening to you. But I was thinking about my wife and my daughter and all that they are experiencing.
That's right.
And so often how, if you're not careful, you can look at yourself and sort of think, is this me? Because you don't see a lot of other people like you. And when the system is saying one thing but doing another, and you see other people sort of smiling and matriculating forward, and you getting there with great enthusiasm until you're not playing nice, acting nice, and sitting down and shutting up, then all of a sudden that becomes a challenge. I want my daughter to read your book so that she begins to understand the kernels of what she's seeing are not her.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. And again, it goes back to that whole ideal of a free life, right? I talk a little bit about this Esther principle, and I kick it off in the book. And I'm going to go through the whole. So I'm not a biblical scholar by any means, but one of the lessons that I've learned early on and kept with me from a biblical standpoint was the story of Esther, right? And Esther was a Jewish woman who married a king that did not know she was Jewish. And the king petitioned to kill all the Jews, and her uncle came to her and said, Esther, please save us, basically. And Esther was fearful and said, but the king doesn't know I'm Jewish. And in fact, if he found out, I myself could be killed. And Mordecai, her husband, said that God would deliver us. But what if you have come to this place for such a time as this? And I think we start our journey with understanding that we have come to this place for such a time as this. That we have a purpose for being in this place at this moment, right? It's not, I think we think it's arbitrary that someone gave us this opportunity, right? But if you understood that you're at this place for this moment to do something, then you let go of your guard about how I should show up. I'm already here, right? And so one of the things I talk a little bit about in the book is that the first thing to navigate courage is really to see your own humanity. I don't have to show up as something. I am the thing. So I just show up and bring all of that to the table because it's there. It's not made up in any kind of way. And not allow anyone to actually make it up for me, right? I'm there. And so part of what I talk a little bit about navigating courage is that you actually have to see your own humanity. And I think that's one of the things that devoid us when we think about whiteness, right? When we think about the construct, the social construct of whiteness in and of itself. It actually devoids white people from seeing themselves.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
and it tells everyone else not to see themselves. And so you can't talk about diversity and not fully see your own humanity, quite frankly. And so I hope that when people read the book that they openly see themselves, because when you do that, I think you can actually see others.
You
And
talked a little bit, Robin, about, courage
yeah,
and navigating courage. What is courage to you,
yeah.
and how can one overcome their own fears and reservations to really get into their self and courage?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So first of all, I started thinking about courage more deeply. I was at an international leadership conference, and it was shortly after the Charlottesville murders in Virginia, and people were really wounded, hurting, quite frankly, around what to do. So people were sitting there and so we were having this conversation about diversity and inclusion and what does that mean, and people we asked them, what do you want to know from this panel? Like, what do you want us to talk a little bit about? Because you could feel the hurt still in the room, and people talked about, I just want to know, what do I need to do? Like, I feel like I need to be more courageous to do some stuff. And I started writing down the word courage. And what jumped out at me is rage. So if you look at the word courage, it actually has the word rage in it.
Yes.
And what I started to study is to believe, and I do believe this, is that I'm not sure that you can be courageous, take action without some level of rage.
Yeah.
And that's really important for us because I think the system in of itself tells us not to be outraged, tell us not to display rage at all. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Right. And so I remember when I write about this in the book, one of my bosses, I had something had happened, and I spoke out against it, and it was not well received by the most, which is what happens. And I just remember us going out to lunch, and her saying to me, "Yeah, well, I mean, you did this. I mean, I felt you're just so courageous. It really was courageous for you to do that." And I thought, and I looked at her and I said, "No, I was pissed."
Yeah.
Actually, I was just pissed. Right. And until we get comfortable with just being pissed and saying acknowledge, it's because what happens after being pissed, I was enraged. And I actually say in the book that rage is about community. That I can be mad or angry about what happens to me individually, but by the time I get to rage, it's because I see myself, my circumstance, along with everyone else. And so what rage does is it helps us stop doing this cost-benefit analysis of what it would mean for me individually. I don't give a shit what happens to me. I need to help the community, and then we take action. And so that rage is what turns into courage. And oftentimes we're asking people to be outraged or be courageous when they really are not outraged about the status quo.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Robin, why don't you walk us through? We're going to ask you to go back a little bit to even walk us through what Ken has called for your athletic career and what you learned from that sort of bolstered your understanding of who you are.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to say about the navigating part, because I do think that I'm going to go back to the navigating, but I will get to the athletic part. The fact that we are all navigating that rage and that courage, both our rage and our actions, we're all navigating. We don't get it right every day. Right. It doesn't come natural for us. It's a practice that we should be thinking about. How do we practice it? Yeah. We'll get it wrong, and we'll self-reflect and say, "Oh, I missed this opportunity to do something meaningful today. I have another opportunity, maybe tomorrow." And so we're all navigating. So I have to put those two words together, because I do think that out of context around courage and rage, people think rage will actually consume us if we are not thinking about how we're navigating that in a way for our own individual decisions. So I just want to make sure I close that loop. Yeah. My athletic career, it's who I am, right? I have always been an athlete, quite frankly. In high school, I played volleyball, basketball, and ran track. I ended up going to the University of New Orleans on a basketball scholarship. I believe that my physical, the ability for me physically is also connected to my spiritual being, which is also connected to my mental being. Like I believe that it is for me. And so I'm at my best when I am physically healthy, mentally healthy, and spiritually healthy. And all three of those are connected for me. The other thing I think I got from athletics is to the ability to think about how to really push past um, my own set limits, right? So I remember early on in my basketball career, so I was a good athlete. I was the top recruit when I went off to college, and I remember the first couple of weeks of preseason. I was a hot mess. I had this little short woman. I'm 6'3". I had this little short woman. She was 5'4". Her name was Sybil, and I really was convinced that she was crazy, crazy lady. She would push us every single day. I would leave out of the gym. I would vomit. I would throw up. I would vomit before practice. I would vomit after practice. I was like, she is actually trying to kill me. Right. I remember calling home one day and said to my mom, "It's time to come home because I think she's trying to kill me. Like, I'm going to die here." And back to my mother, who you talked a little bit about, hung up on me. So I'm on the phone. I'm complaining. I'm telling everything what had happened was, and this lady is crazy. And she hung up on me. And essentially, she must have known that I could not have come back to where I had come from. And so, her hanging up on me probably saved my life. But then I had to go play Sybil because I had left the gym. And so, Sybil made me hurt for a whole week. And I thought I was going to die. And at the end of the week, though, we sat down and she said, "I pushed you because I knew you can." And it became this lifelong lesson that sometimes life pushes us because we can, right? And that lesson that we can shows up every single day. And so finding ways to push myself, finding my ways to push others, but also in the spirit of because you can. Because I knew she had faith that I actually could do it, right? And so that's one of the critical lessons that I learned in my athletic career.
Powerful. Let me ask you this. I think that it's so important to see if you can put some language around what does it mean to be an African American female leader administrator in these white majority male dominated environments.
Yeah. So it's interesting because again, if you believe yourself to be free, you don't even see it. Like, so people would ask me that all the time. Well, are people intimidated by you? I'm like, no, because why would they be intimidated by me? I know I'm 6'3" with a pair of 3-inch heels on, and you know, I'm not the dumbest person in the room, and I do have opinions, and you know. So, but I didn't see like what other people were seeing. I'm just showing up in who I am. And so in some ways, I walked part of my career blindly and thinking I didn't see how other people saw me. I just showed up. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I didn't get entangled with trying to figure it out so much, right? I do believe it helped that I was in athletics for the majority of my career very early on because I was around like-minded people, right? I was around people who have been affirmed all their lives to say, go out, compete, be competitive, have a voice, be strong, be powerful, right? Like that is something that athletics gives you. And so that's great because I was surrounded by people like that. Now, it would backfire on me, right? When I would show up in that same space and this body and this color with those white men, I'm like, no, but I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still the same person. And and I've always been that. And so in some ways I got really comfortable with saying this is not something that I aspire to be. It's just who I am. And the sooner we can accept that for ourselves, like I'm gonna always be that person in the back of the room that's gonna question the thing. As soon as I got really comfortable with that's just who I am, like part of me writing this book was actually name my gifts. Because what happens is your gifts will also be used against you. But if you don't know what they are in the very first place, you don't even understand how that weapon is being used, right? So I talk a lot about the fact that I can see everything. I'm in the room and I am watching and seeing everything. I can actually spot the question that has not been said. I know the next question. I can actually see down the line and I can see those things where other people can't. But if I didn't know that that was a gift, then someone would use that and weaponize it against me,
Yes.
use it for bad, and I would not have owned it first and foremost. I talk about slapping Becky. I tell a story in the book about I slapped Becky. You know, my mom came down and Becky spit on my instrument, and I got up quietly and slapped the shit out of Becky, and then sat back in my seat. And then when the principal tried to suspend me, I fought for my rights, and we were both going to be suspended.
Right.
But what I realized is I've been slapping Becky all of my life.
Right.
That wasn't my Becky slapping moment happened in the 7th grade. You know, this 25, 30 plus a year career has been filled with slapping Becky moments. But the sooner I got to this agreement with myself is that's what I do. That my advocacy for myself and for others is not something that just came up that I decided to do one day. It's just actually who I am.
Right. Right. Let me ask you, what made her think she was going to call you darky, spit on you, and you was just going to just let that slide?
Well, because she had done it to some other people before, right? Like that's what happens. People are allowed to get away with things. And that's what I mean by we have to get fully aware of our own humanity. Yeah, because that shouldn't be, because somebody else should have slapped her actually before, right?
Right.
Before she got to me.
Right. Right.
You know, the fact that she had been bullied all these people before and no one had slapped her back was problematic even for me.
Right. Right.
So, you know, she was just trying to try the, you know, the one, I was just another person on the block, but somebody actually should have stopped her before.
Right. So you had your more justifiable Will Smith moment.
Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily Will Smith.
No,
I wouldn't necessarily go there. I ain't gonna go to the Will Smith moment. But I am gonna say that there are times in which in our lives, I actually say this in the book, that you can't advocate for others if you're not willing to advocate for yourself. That it's disingenuous to think about that you're advocating for others. And I think oftentimes we do that, particularly in the social service industry. We're like, we're doing this on behalf of someone else. And I'm like, but you ain't getting equal pay. That's a problem.
Right.
Like, right? You ain't fighting for your own equal pay. You're not fighting for your own self, your own right to be there legitimately, be there, to show up in the room powerful.
Right.
And so I call it disingenuous to show up for others if you're not advocating for yourself. And I believe that to be true. So my slapping Becky moments is not on behalf of someone else. It has to first be on behalf of my own humanity. And then in addition to other people.
Right.
So, Dr. Martin, you mentioned something in your conversation here. It's reminding me of a few other platforms where they are celebrity women in some cases, and in some cases they're simply just women spokespeople. And they have been talking about women not really owning their identity and being lost in showing up. And you are talking today about everything different than that, your experience, showing up, etc. What advice, counsel, direction would you share with anyone who is struggling with showing up in their humanity, showing up in their self, showing up in their own identity with limiting their stereotype threat, if you will? How do we overcome our own stuff to show up properly?
I would say what is properly.
That's right.
Our authentic self. I guess that's what he's
You're
saying.
here.
Yep.
You are a living being. The fact that we are breathing, we're here. Period.
Yep.
However you identify yourself, it's not gendered, it's not, you are here. So act accordingly to your own standards, right? And so again, I go back to seeing our own humanity. Like, what does that look like for you? And I think we all have to sit there for that. Because what happens in this white supremacy culture is that it's been defining our humanity. It's been defining white people's humanity.
Mm.
Like, I'm here. I'm a present being in this moment. Why not be and discover who that is on a day-to-day basis? Like, how do we discover that? Like, what does that discovery look like for us? And that's what I mean by navigating that. I'm navigating the discovery of myself, the good, the bad, the ugly. Every day we get to do that as full human beings. And we're not taught to be full human beings in a white supremacy society. We're just not. No one is, though, right?
Right.
And so I think we need to sit in that. And that's why, for me, thinking about Ubuntu and thinking about the humanist way of leading and being is in some ways a counter argument to this DNI work, right? Because I am not just my identity that someone has given to me, the social construct of race, the social construct, even of gender.
Right.
I'm not those, that's not the totality of who I am. In fact, that is so minuscule of who I am that it's almost, does it matter, right? I mean, so.
I love that. So I'm going to go back to slapping Becky because I think that it's so important when you show up in organizations and you see the bullies in the room. There are so many people that are just run over by them that I can see that you picked the wrong person this time. That I'm not literally the one that I'm not easy to run over. And so Terry has asked this question. So I like the whole thing of courage and rage. How important is it to keep your composure at the same time as we're trying to navigate the rage inside of us because of what's coming at us? And if we, in fact, need this job, and the world seems to sometimes only react to the one who's pushing back against the inequities as opposed to dealing with the people that are acting in racist, sexist ways. How do we strike that balance in your view?
So again, I go back to the first word, navigating, right? And so I wanna make something really clear. Rage. When we think about the word rage, I actually want to But my goal in my work is to normalize the idea of rage and courage, because we think about rage, we think about this outward, overly aggressive display of emotion. That if you look at the word cur and rage, like to the word, if you break the word down, cur is the Latin word of cur is heart.
Mm-hmm.
And rage could actually be interpreted as cries. And so courage together could be actually interpreted as cries of the heart.
Mm.
So if you think about when you are enraged, if you resettle this idea that rage then is really your heart crying for humanity. It takes you down a notch to say, I don't have, because my heart is crying for humanity, doesn't necessarily create this overt, aggressive behavior. Sometimes actually rage shows up of us just getting quiet.
Yes.
Sometimes rage actually shows up in one simple tear, right? Sometimes rage actually shows up in saying to someone, I see you. But we've been conditioned in the stereotype around angry Black woman, angry Black man, that we are going to do everything not to display that.
Right.
And what I say is it's an oppressive tool. In fact, we should actually say, yeah, I'm pissed about this because this goes against humanity and it goes against community. But if we thought about rage as communal, not this individual, I'm going to have an outburst, then we will comport ourselves and think about our actions in a very different way.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right? And so the other thing is my self-regulation is not for other people. So myself, me regulating my emotions, myself, um, is more so for myself. How do I want to comport me as me? But what has happened in this world is we are so consumed with how everybody else is seeing us that then we become actors in our whole lives. And so when I judge myself and say, you know what, I actually could have handled that a lot better today. Me, Robin, myself. How could I be better at that? What triggered me today about that situation? What was I thinking? How could I be better for me?
Mm-hmm.
Not because this outward organization or institution said, you didn't say that right, because they're going to always regulate me. They're going to always regulate me. But I have to do that work internally for me first before everyone else, before I get caught up in everyone else trying to regulate me. Are there opportunities that people come to me and say, here's some ways to do that better and I should be listening? Yes, that's also a part of my learning. I should be doing that. I should be listening for that. But I often find that the world is trying to regulate our behaviors and regulate us into perfection of their articulation of perfection. And I'm like, yeah, no, I need to be better for me. And sometimes that means I'm going to get real fired up. And I'm not going to apologize for doing that. I'm just not.
Mm-hmm.
I like how you say that with such a beautiful smile there.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Some people need to be slapped.
Right.
Some situations actually do need to be slapped.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you this. I'm going back to that definition of courage, cries of the heart.
Yeah.
Do you see it as uh, the courage, the power to endure, unfair situation, or is it the action that we take in response to the cries of our heart? Is courage? Is it the living through it, or is it the confronting it, or is it a combination of both and situationally defined?
Yeah, I think it's both, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes courage to live through some stuff.
Absolutely.
It takes courage also to do some stuff, right? So one of the things I write in the book is that, we talk about consequences, right? And oftentimes what stops people from doing something is they're worried about the consequences. And I actually say in the book, there's consequences for your actions and inactions, right? So that we're all living in this consequential life. So if you do something, there's a consequence. You can't get fired.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be let go. You can't be ostracized. You can't be all those things. If you do nothing, people will still be hurt. Inequities will still persist, right? Like it's all those different things. And again, I go back to the word navigate. And everything, I always judge myself. So again, this is why you had to see your own humanity. Like what's important to me? And the universe will bring it back around to tell you what's important to you, right? Like, I'll sit there, I'll be quiet about something, and everything in my soul is churning. And I say nothing. It'll come around next week. Same thing. It'll churn again. Maybe 2 years later, churning, mad at yourself. Now you done developed an ulcer, right? Now you got a little eye twitch. Universe keeps trying to get your attention. That's your thing. That actually is your thing to say.
Right.
There are other people in the room that does nothing for them.
Right.
Absolutely nothing for them. So you ask me all the time, well, how do you know? I'm like, yeah. The universe will let you know. You know, right? But if you don't understand your own humanity, you're not paying attention to what you have come to do.
Right. Tommy, let me throw this in there around Judy, and then Tommy jump right in, and we might even go over a little bit because you've been so profound, and the community is responding to you. You say in your book, you talk about as a child being the one to question sometimes your mother, and that you would see your siblings start backing out the room. And you said you knew then that was preparing you for something that you were going to see as an adult. And that's what Judy is saying. We must stand for ourselves because the allies often aren't there you talk about being in rooms and seeing other women, people of color, sort of backing up, and you having to stand. Speak to that.
Yeah. So when I think about when I talk about courage, I talk about it from a community standpoint, right? That once you are taking these courageous actions, oftentimes they're on behalf of the community. It doesn't mean the community is there though with you, right? They're on behalf of the community. Doesn't mean that you got a community of people behind you. And in fact, oftentimes I would say that that's not, because we have not normalized it. We have not normalized this whole ideal around courage. And so we allow people to stand out there on their own because out of our own fear, right? We know it's right. We know what the person said in the room was the right thing to say. We just too afraid to say it. And so what happens oftentimes, I would say the thing in the room, and then I would leave out of the room, and then I would have a trail of people coming and go, "You were so right. I'm so glad you said that. You girl, you told them." And I would get so angry at the people coming late. And so finally I would say, "Stop coming down behind me telling me I was right. If you want to tell me I was right in the meeting, shut up, shit." And I would do like that. And then people were like, "Oh." So the next time we're in a meeting, I would get an amen. Because I would look at them like, "You better know you better not come to me. You gonna get it too."
Right.
Because if I'm out there on my own, I'm gonna be truly out there on my own. But again, I think you have to know what you're standing up for. Why is it important to you that you're standing up for this thing? And have some expectation that that's your thing, that's your place. And that you're not oftentimes going to have a great following. Interestingly enough, though, in my career, I may not have had like a following in that moment or people, but there's not been a community in which I have gone to that I've not found lifelong friends because of that courage.
Yeah.
That I've actually attracted more people and sustained a broader community because of that courage as opposed to not.
Absolutely.
As you think about the moment right now, Dr. Martin, what challenge is in front of you right now that you are telling yourself that you need to navigate courage?
Yeah. So it's truly the whole launch of the Navigating Courage. So I've written the book. I've actually built a framework. I have a ton of assets that I've been developing over the years and an entire framework around us. The universe is like, now is the time. And so when I look around our world, quickly, I'm like, if we don't normalize a sense of courage and reconnect to our own humanity, we are literally destroying ourselves in this world. The day is Earth Day, and when you think about the devastation that we don't even see Mother Earth in itself, so we don't even see that humanity. And I think we should be outraged about what we are doing to this universe, to this planet. And so we have to normalize people standing up for justice and humanity, both ourselves and the collective humanity. So this is the time, and I've been sitting with what that looks like for me, and could look like for the world.
I was just thinking about a couple of things. I was thinking about your time at the Gates Foundation, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that. And do you have excitement right now for what's in front of you? Because the universe and the world is crying out for expressions of courage. And millennials are there. They are basically saying, if you won't respect me, then do so. I'm out of here.
Yeah. So the Gates Foundation is a wonderful organization doing some powerful work across the globe. What I think I've learned, so I've learned that, and I've learned that having the experience has renewed affirmed, actually, not renewed, affirmed that there are so many smart, caring, compassionate people in the world globally that really want to solve like really gnarly problems. Like, right? And they wake up every day and they're committed to doing that. And it's a blessing to see that at scale, right?
Mhm.
The other side of that, though, if I'm being honest, is there still a level of fear? One of the things that I said early on when I got to the Gates Foundation, this idea about this just seems to be fear, and fear of failure, this idea of what perfection looks like,
Mm.
trying to reach something that I don't know if it's obtainable in this world, and it stops innovation, right? Our lack of questioning and courage in the workplace
Mm.
stops innovation in so many ways. And I don't think that the Gates Foundation is immune to that, even given all of its resources. And in fact, I think the more resources that you have, oftentimes that shows up even more so.
Mm.
And so how do we leverage the human beings, the real resources in all corporations, right? Um, to navigate their own courage and think about innovation in a very different way for humanity, right? Right. Uh, so there's a powerful opportunity, quite frankly, for not only corporations but individuals that work in those corporations to do something that I think the majority of the people actually do want to do.
So Terry has asked a question here. Terry and I grew up together, went to college together, and he's in LA, and he's a foster dad of I think about 4 or 5 different children. So he says, "How can I teach my foster kids to navigate through their trauma?"
Yeah. So one of the things we don't allow our kids to do is to articulate their rage from the trauma.
Mm.
We don't allow people of color to articulate the rage of the trauma. Like, let's just sit there for a moment. And we should sit there and let that happen on a regular basis, quite frankly. And sit there. And then propose and ask people how they turn that trauma into action for themselves and for others. Because there is gifts even in those traumas, right? But we don't allow people to actually own them, to say, this pissed me off. This shouldn't have happened. Whatever that wouldn't have happened did. And then let them tap into their own gifts, right? Actually allow them to sit there in their gifts. What are they made to do? Let them see their humanity in the trauma and outside of the trauma. But we don't tell kids this, we don't give them space to see themselves. We rarely tell each other, like, what are you really good at? What are you really good at? Like, you are really good at this. The other day, I had my 4-year-old nephew over, and he sees everything too, though. He sees everything. He is so intuitive, 4 years old, right? And I remember on Easter, he had the Easter eggs, he hid the Easter eggs. I'm not a good hider of Easter eggs. But he was finding them all. And I just kept saying, you are really good Easter egg finder. You are so intuitive. And he said, what did intuitive mean? I was like, because you easily spot Easter eggs, right? How do we name their gifts? How do we help them identify some of those gifts early on? How do we give them the gift of gifting? And so that's the freedom that I think my mom would give us. Like, how do we allow them to question without sit down, shut up? Because that's more trauma that we put on. So how are we working through? So I would ask Terrence, how are you working through your own trauma? Because we all have them.
Yeah.
And if you work through your own trauma, then you can help your foster kids work through their trauma.
Right.
And then help them to name and find their gifts that they already have. Because they have them.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest gift that I would say.
Right. I would say that Terry has been exceptional at being an amazing, off the chart foster dad of the most difficult children in LA. They are choosing to place those with him because of his effectiveness of taking kids that have been in 15, 17 different homes unsuccessfully. And they put him with him. And he does leverage his own trauma in his life to help them understand you're not alone. I've been through some of those things, and we can make it. So, the other thing I want to say about you, though, and I'd like you to speak to this. So often we see people that are leaders, and they are simply people who are up in front of others. They're saying and doing things that others don't need to follow. What I love about you is that you've not just been that kind of leader, which you have been a transformational leader, but you are also a powerful ally. And you feel with people and you sit with people and you support people. I was just looking at the piece that you were talking about being at a university and African American leader had died. Another dean had been sort of, fired or demoted, and you were seeing somebody and just the compassion that you had around that, and the tears that flowed with that allows people to know that what they're going through is painful, and that I'm willing to be here with you because I'm hurt too.
That's right. That's right. But it's so I deal around, talk a little bit about this in the framework is that we're interconnected. That part of what we've been taught, particularly in the Western world, is so I deal around meritocracy. That we've gotten here some way because we're so good and so kind and so smart, and it's all by ourselves. I've done it all by myself kind of mentality. But that's just such a big lie, right? That everything in the universe is connected. And that when you start to see one's person injustice is also your injustice. You can't have a conversation in the context of Black Lives Matter and police brutality and not have it in the context of police brutality, period. Brutalizing other people, society. Right? And so, but we wanna subset that and don't want to say that any brutality is unacceptable. Doesn't matter which community it's in. The silencing of all people is unacceptable, right? So until we start to see that interconnection, that are interconnected, until we start to feel it, right? So what happens when I'm in those moments? I feel myself and how it impacts me, and I feel how it impacts others. But if you don't have this humanist perspective and thinking about that, you're not making those connections
Right.
as yourself. You're always in this kind of cost-benefit, individualistic way of thinking about the world. If I thought about what my individual actions are taking upon the universe, I would change some of my actions. If I felt like I was connected to the universe, right? And so that interconnectedness, I think, is a really big key to leadership. And so it goes back to, I'm going to break it full circle, right? So you go back to the athletic kind of paradigm. Only one person can shoot the ball. But damn, it takes a whole lot of people to do a lot of things to get that good shot off, right? So we're interconnected. What's happening is interconnected in some ways. And so use that basketball analogy. Someone has to set a pick to get somebody else open. Somebody's probably has to dribble down the court to get somebody open, to set the pick, to come off the shot. If you made it great, if you didn't make it, somebody has to rebound. So it's all those different things. All those things are working together for one greater cause. And I just don't think we've gotten away from that. And so we see the CEO and he's disconnected from the people. So earlier in the call, he was like, and now the CEO is coming down to the people. I'm like, the CEO is the people. If you're the CEO and you don't see yourself as the people,
right?
It's a problem.
Seriously, Like, you are the people. But
Mhm.
what happens in this world is that we actually tell our CEOs and our quote unquote leaders that they're not the people.
Right.
If you make those, if you want the conditions and want to be paid well, then you should pay other people well because you're part of the system, right? If you want people to have good, if you want good benefits, then make sure everybody else has some good benefits too, because you're part of the system. You're interconnected.
Mhm.
You know, so.
Right. Let me throw one other in there. So I want you to talk a little bit about this, just in case you might not fully see this. But I see that your superpower and your wealth is in your story. And so I see you, President, CEO of Navigating Courage, as sort of locking the shackles that sometimes institutional leadership place on us. And I see you as being able to sort of burst into the fullness of who you are. And there is a desperate sea of people out there of all colors and all genders and all types that are waiting for you to help them get the chains off themselves. But I'm going to say that before we get to that, there is this question mark that people have in their minds around institutions and institutional leadership versus entrepreneurship and sort of the freedom to provide leadership there. Both have values. We have needs in both places. What advice do you have for people around how do they think about when I should be inside of institutions bringing about change and transformation, and when it's time for me to maybe move out to the freedom of doing my own thing?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the answer for that, quite frankly,
Right.
right? Because I've done both, and we're all more secure in the institution kind of realm. Although to navigate courage inside the institution is dangerous. Like, it's still in an individualistic kind of way because we haven't normalized it yet, right? And so in some ways you are an individual actor. You know,
You're an entrepreneur, right?
but no, seriously, you are, and
Yep.
you have to
Yep.
know that, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if I have a really good answer for that. All I can say is that even when I'm in institutions, because I have done both, because when I'm in institutions, I'm aware. I just show up, and I think it forces the institutions. It actually pulls the institution in a different way. Um, it does. And I've seen it. I've seen it. When I leave institutions, people have said, "Man, we are changing." But because what we don't understand, and I go back to Terrence's question, you know, Terrence is seeing his own humanity in of itself is allowing him to transform the kids that he's taking in, or the young people that he's taking in, because they're attracted to that. Because if he's seeing his humanity, he can see theirs, and then that is transformed them, right? You almost give people permission to be who they are authentically in some ways. So I think it takes a little bit more navigating courage to be on your own, particularly in a world that glorifies institutional leaders. But I think that's an individual choice.
One other thing, Tommy, I'm sorry. One other revelation that I'm getting right here, Robin, is that what happens is that when you're inside of institutions, they really appreciate your brilliance up to a point.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So they're celebrating up to a point, but I want to tie that to your own revelation. When you said that you were a leader and you left the meeting and had just given out all of these, you gonna do this, and then you thought about it later and said, "Oh my goodness, I done turned into Becky." They don't get that revelation. So I think that too often, too many leaders in the world don't get the revelation that you got that made you go back and try to adjust how you dealt with the people that worked for you.
Yeah, no, that's good. The other thing I'll say when you just said that, it made me think about, and you know that they only can take so much. Like the institution
Yep.
was not built for like somebody like me to stay for like 30 years.
Right.
But I'm also not. No, seriously, it's not.
2 years I got
know
to.
that.
Right.
I didn't get to know that. But here's the other side of that. I'm also not built for 30 years with the institution.
Right.
So it's less about them being built for me than for me going back and say, I'm not built to stay somewhere for 30 years. And I have had to get really, really okay with that as a professional. Because if you don't, you'll start to think about your life as like a failure. You're like, well, dang, why didn't I stay for 30 years? Like,
Right.
I'm not built to stay for 30 years. I will burn the place down if I have to stay for 30 years, because the innovation, my understanding of how I want to innovate and question and do different things is something that I need personally. But me, that's not about anything else. There's some people that are great at being in places for 30 years and making some wonderful changes. And they have been highly successful and been transformative in their organization. Like, it takes all kinds. But if you don't know, like, I will also consume or destroy myself, destruct myself.
Right.
If I don't get out soon,
Right.
you actually have to know that that's always still your personality.
That's powerful. Tommy?
Yeah, that was good. This has been an enriching conversation for me. I do know Dr. Robin Martin personally and professionally, and today I was the student, just listening. I look forward to taking a deeper dive in your book. I consider myself to have courage in a number of different ways. However, there are times that I am overwhelmed with rage, that it can be for me kind of immobilizing.
Yeah.
Right. As I'm a problem solver in the rage, I'm stuck on how to navigate it. So I look forward to reading the book to understand it. And some of this is historical biography based on my own lived experience, and others where I've had enough. I'm outraged, but I want to see a result from my outrage. And when I'm struggling with what are we doing here, right? I need some tools and some techniques. So thank you, Dr. Robin Martin, for your presence, intellect, wisdom, and personality today. Love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll just go just a couple more minutes, because I want you to speak to this, Tommy. I think this is going to tie together what you just said there. That they're doing a lot of research now on the anxiety and mental stress that DEI professionals are experiencing, especially those that are inside of institutions. And it's this dichotomy of, the institution saying we want somebody to lead us around becoming more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And then when you try to make any change, they're saying, no, 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 no. And so you're right there at the intersection of fantasy and reality. And so you talk a little bit about that. So Tommy, I think that's part of the challenge, is when we realize sometimes that we're in a place that may not be interested in achieving that which they've hired us to do.
What I would do real quick before you answer, I'm privileged. I'm very honored today to be speaking in front of about 100 young boys at the top of the hour. And so I'll transition, but I'm going to listen to the show. But I wanted to transition by saying thank you, Robin, for being with us today. All right. All right.
Thank you, Tommy.
So I'm writing a piece right now. I don't know why this struck me over the last couple days, but it's in my spirit, so I need to just get it out. One of my biggest thoughts, concerns, I would say, around D&I work is we require very little, or demand or ask very little of white people. And if they give us a little, we go, yay, yay, you that attaboy. we are allowing, even in this space, for people to consume, to be consumers, to take, to extract, but not asking them in return really, really, really how to engage or what is required of them. We brush over that in the D&I work.
Right. And I would say that I've
So
got.
hold on, let me just. So the D&I leader. So the D&I leader is exhausted.
Right.
It should be, because if all you're doing and organizations are extracting, they're not putting anything in, and even a little bit of gas they put in, we're running that gas out of that car at $4 a gallon. And until we start to think about a different paradigm for that work, quite frankly, we're going to stay in this cycle. And in fact, that cycle is dangerous.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Age changes us. And so as I've gotten older, there's two things that have happened for me. Number one, I'm not going to care any more than you. So if you don't care, I mean, I can't care more than you. So that's one. And number two, I'm going to let you get what you want. So I was talking to an executive, I was there to coach them, and on how to say the right things and all like that. And so he says to me, he says, Eric, I need everybody to know that I'm not for diversity, I'm for profit. I said, oh, that's good. I said, if you're for profit, then you got to be for diversity. He said again, no, I'm for profit, not for diversity. I need people to understand that. By the time he said that the third time, you know what I said to him in front of the whole crowd? I said, now, I agree with you. I said, now, let me tell you this. Don't let anybody stop you from saying that. Don't let a soul stop you from saying that. I want you to get the biggest megaphone you can get and say that to all the people. I said, now, just like if I had a crystal ball, I can tell you what they're going to say. The first thing they'll say is, well, that's good. If you're for profit, then you're about diversity. But then when they understand what you're saying, I said, you're going to have backlash like you've never seen. I said, but when you see the backlash, don't let that dissuade you.
That's right.
Stay the course. Because I think that we have to stop protecting people from their truths and what they want to live. If that's what you want to live, let's put that on blast and see if you can live with that.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Because as we protect people, we delay and almost deceive the public into who they are. Where we are right now and where we're headed, corporations are no longer going to be able to easily sit on the sidelines. They're being asked to choose now. And so you've got this polarized world that you'd like to hide and not choose a side so you can keep them all as customers.
That's right. That's right.
No, people are putting pressure on you. So that's the thing I love is that I like it when things get worse, when people get nastiest, because that's the storm before change happens. And so I believe that we are on the front end. It's just like Putin in Russia. He thought he was just going to go there, surround them, and they were just all going to put up white flags. No, brother. Some of them said, we're going down with the country, and we will fight you to the last person. And so that's an overreach. And so I think that as we continue to do those, we'll see them. Can you talk about Katrina and you being in that environment, what you saw, what you experienced, what you learned from that that's helpful in this conversation?
Yeah. So I had the fortune, I would say, of living in New Orleans, which is an amazing, amazing city, quite frankly. One of my favorite cities. And so at the time that Katrina happened, I was the athletic director at Dillon University. And we were fortunate at the university that we were able to evacuate prior to the right hit to the city. But what I saw afterwards from both some of our local government, our federal government, state government, was a collapse on just to see the people in their whole humanity, right? Our response to Katrina was not the best, quite frankly. That's just to even put it even mildly. It was horrific. quite frankly. That the fact that our country was calling citizens immigrants or refugees and the response was just delayed. It wasn't a good, humane response to such a crisis of this magnitude. But one of the lessons, a couple of lessons that I've learned for myself was one of the first things, right, to see how my humanity is interconnected with everything else. Right, at that point in time in my career, I just got a master's degree. I was an athletic director. I was a pretty successful person, right, in my newfound success. And all of a sudden, you show up in Katrina and you don't have access to your bank account. You don't have access to basic things. 90% of your things are believed to be gone. And you are shopping in Walmart and then a FEMA line with everyone else. And it really starts for you to understand, like my life, my humanity is also connected. That I am all of those people. I am the teacher. I am the CEO. I am all those people. On that day, we were a community of people that were not necessarily served well. So it got me to thinking about it. So it helped me to see my own humanity, number one. And number two, it started to really get me to thinking about leadership more broadly, which is why I went back to get my doctorate degree and study leadership more holistically. Because it made me start to think about, when does leadership work well and when does it not work well, quite frankly. And what I found over the years is that when leaders are successful, they actually do see their own humanity in others, and when they don't, then they don't. They're not. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. Let's sort of play out for those out there in our community and beyond. And I apologize for the sound. Oh my goodness, it's been horrible. But what will they experience when they engage Dr. Robin Martin to sort of help them and their workforces in engage in and embrace this concept of navigating courage? What does that look like?
Ask the question again. I'm sorry.
What does it look like? So for those that are out there that are considering they want to take advantage of you, your consulting philosophy and material, what does that look like in terms of the ways that you would engage them?
Yeah, so I've done a number of different things, from individual coaching to group level coaching to really thinking about retreats. I have a huge retreat for an organization that's really on its journey around thinking about social impact. And you know, during those retreats, we're getting to the individual level kind of work, but ultimately to get to how those individuals are interconnected to make the organization outcomes go. It really is around strategy, right? Thinking about from a strategy standpoint, how you think about the organizational strategy, how do you think about the leverage of resources, the people resources and dollar resources, and then really thinking about the outcomes, right? What do you really want to drive, both for yourself, but also as a collective group? And so I'm hoping that people that engage with me on those types of services will start to think about what that looks like for their organization in a meaningful, deep way, outside of the current D&I structure, which would say, here's a set of number of people, here's what the demographic actually looks like, this is what your pay structure looks like really and truly see each other as resources, as gifts, and understand what each one of those are bringing to the table, and really and truly not just articulating like what you want for your organization outcomes, but what does true success look like? When we talk about equitable strategy, and we've done it a lot in the Gates Foundation, we talk about strategy a lot. What does your strategy look like for equity? How's your organization creating greater equity or inequities? And we need to be really honest about that, right? Because I think organizations also are navigating their own courage. They're also doing that cost benefit analysis of what that means for the organization to their bottom line. And so having a different conversation around those two things.
One of the things that I talk about, Robin, is I say the two greatest learnings that I've achieved over my 31 years as a consultant has been, number one, people are an organization's greatest asset, not profound. Number two, they have the answer. And so I really encourage them to do everything they can to unlock the authentic voices of people that work for them, because as you do that, you gain more closer to the full potential of each person. I sense that weaker leaders may think they don't want people that are courageous working in the organizations. But I would believe that one of the things that you're offering is for insightful leaders, then what they want is courageous people. Help make the case there for leaders around why it's so important for them to develop a culture that people can navigate courage.
Yeah. So you're right. Some organizations don't want it,
Right,
and they should not engage.
right,
Some leaders absolutely do not want to navigate. They really do want people to show up as pawns, do the stuff they said they needed them to do, and move on. And that has been actually the model for our country. Um,
Oh,
it's been the model. And so when I say that we should be thinking about normalizing courage, it is around innovation. And so you can't have, and so that is a model. And then we should be thinking about, organizations should be thinking about a model of innovation, real innovation. And innovation cannot happen, will not happen in any sustainable way without organizations thinking about how they truly leverage the totality of their resources, both their dollars and their people. Because we actually think about people as resources, but we don't think about our dollars. What are our dollars going toward? And how are we using it toward innovation? How are we spending it out? Where is the money going to? Who is the money going to? Who is left out of that table, and who should be at that table to help us? And so when you think about resources, I think we should just think about it in a very expansive way toward innovation. And so we acknowledge that some people are not going to hire or want this type of makeup in their organization. They just don't.
right.
And I would say that's for the majority of them. And that's okay too.
Ooh,
Right? And that's okay. And I think we have to be okay with that.
right.
Yeah.
And so there are benefits to the philosophies that we're talking about because the marketplace is going to have its day and the marketplace is going to speak. And so at the end of the day, if you don't buy into some of these concepts, the marketplace is going to get that right. I'm reading a book. What's that?
Well, so the marketplace is people are making the marketplace get it right. So what COVID has done, this is I love this. So I do love the universe, right? So the universe, in some ways, COVID has made people sit.
Yeah.
And in some ways, we've had a chance to see our own humanity.
That's right. No
So
doubt.
People are what people are responding to is starting to see their worth, starting to see their fullness.
Right.
And they're starting to see how the lack of care for humanity causes such a vast amount of destruction in a very limited amount of time.
Right.
I just heard today that COVID-19 is the third largest cause of death over the last 2 years. That's millions of people in a very short period of time. I want you really clear. And so when you see this vast, one of the quotes I have in the book is when you see death in front of you, in the back, and on the side, and on your right or your left, you no longer fear that is what's inevitable.
Exactly.
People no longer fear that is what's inevitable. So then you have to focus in on your own humanity. And so what you hear a cry for, quite frankly, is people starting to have this epiphany and see themselves. And so when you can see yourself, you can actually see the system.
Right.
But if the system is always creating these, your mind is always bogged down and not being able to see yourself, then you can't even see how you're connected to the system. And I think COVID has done that for us. And so there's an opportunity here.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is why this is an opportunity to start to think about how to navigate this. Hey, Gary Dent. I see Gary Dent online.
Right. Gary's been speaking the whole way.
That's so inappropriate, but I'm sorry.
Right. And I would say that's what I'm smiling about is because the balance of power is shifting to the people. And organizations are not able to hire people now. I like shopping. Ross Dress for Less is one of my spots, and they're open generally till 10 or 11 at night. They've been closing at 5:15, 5:30 because they can't hire people. Companies, I just talked to a company that said that they were offering $1,000 sign-on bonus for just entry-level jobs. Nobody would come, and so that's interesting. I want to hit one more concept that you talked about. Read this book, The Four Stages of Psychological Safety. In there, they talk about what you were talking about in terms of innovation. Inclusion leads to innovation. You want to drive out fear. And what they talked about is increasing intellectual friction and decreasing social friction. And so and so I think that what happens in organizations where the leaders don't want courage, then they drive up social friction because they want to reduce intellectual friction. And so speak to the importance of psychological safety maybe and how it relates to people's ability to navigate and to express courage.
Yeah, no, I don't have a really good answer for this one. I don't, because I don't have a good answer for this one. Because I'm not quite sure organizations, psychological safety in my mind is so tenuous and is so, what is psychologically safe for me may not be psychologically safe for someone else. And so sometimes I struggle with how to get there as an organization. I think you need to create an organization that you actually see the people and what their individual needs are. So I'll give you an example. But some of that is around leadership, right? So as a coach, I have a team of 15 women. They are all vastly different on how they show up. I remember I had one kid on my team. She would cry every time I screamed at her. I would look at her. I didn't have to scream at her. I would just look at her. And she would just break down. It would just destroy her. And so at some point I was like, you cannot scream at her because you actually need her to go over here and make a shot on the corner. So the truth of the matter is you cannot rant and rage at this. Matter of fact, you want to have to tell her how good she is so that she can get her mind right to make sure that she hits that shot. Exactly. This one over here, I can yell to the cows come home. I get in her face, and that just actually drives her in a different way. She's like, yes, let's go, right?
Right. And
so as a leader, you actually have to know what triggers that you're pulling for each other for your team. And so, but in order to do that, you have to know your team.
Absolutely.
So going back to this humanistic kind of way of thinking, and I don't. The reason people are leaving organizations is because it's not about money, right? Some of it is, some of it not for some people. But people want to be seen, and you just don't see them.
Right.
And so I don't think you can talk about psychological safety as an organization until you start to see the people themselves, and some of that is individual leader.
Right. And in this book, that's the first stage is inclusion safety. That I'm included because I'm a human being. And I think that as I look at psychological safety, I look at it as the same as an effective educator. You cannot educate to the classroom of 35 students. You have to actually customize that lesson to each student's learning style. So I think that as we think about psychological safety and even navigating courage, that ultimately we have to make those adjustments that say we are tuning in to people and creating organizations that have the ability to try to customize themselves.
That's right. But so the inclusion part has to go beyond because you are a human being. The inclusion piece has to come because there's some values and gifts and knowledge that I don't even have.
Absolutely.
Like, right? Like I can get, there's a lot of human beings on this earth.
Right.
But what do I not have in some ways, right? Again, you start with your own humanity. You also know how limited that is. And so if you come from the position from a humanist standpoint, that you know that I only have a certain amount of gifts, a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of, so it is limiting in itself. And so the value the vast innovation comes because other people are in the room.
Absolutely.
That knowledge, that richness, that the solutions actually lie outside of myself. And that so it's not a matter of I need to include them because this is a good thing to do. It's because we do not have the answers as the individual. That interconnectedness is what is the most value. That is the solution. That is the innovation. That's
Right.
where it lies.
Right.
But that's a paradigm shift in where we think about
And it's great.
show up in the meeting and be so kind to everyone.
Right.
If you really thought about innovation in that way, then from a humanist standpoint, you would say, because the solution lies within all of us, that we all have pieces of the solution to the puzzle.
So let me ask you this, Robin. How do we, so if we have the better answer, those of us that do believe in the value of diverse people, diverse organizations, people-centered workplaces, how do we manifest that in a way that allows us to for that to be an advantage, a provable, seeable advantage?
Ask the question again. How do we?
So I think that if you have things that are the better way, how do you demonstrate that? How does that become actionable in ways? I'll give you an example of a definition that I've been working on lately. Warren Bennis had a leadership definition that said that you want to align your strengths in such a way that your weaknesses become irrelevant. And I was moved by that. I was like, oh my goodness, what if we as people of color, people of goodwill, decided to align our strengths and really ignore all the other stuff out there? How powerful would that be? And so I'm looking for an alignment thinking that you have around those of us that really value DEI in legitimate, genuine ways. How do we allow that to show up in a way as an advantage that's back to my marketplace can prove this out?
So I don't disagree with the statement overall.
I like the pushback in you. You know I do.
I
I like the pushback in you. You're being kind with it, but I like it.
Well, because here's the deal, right? I have some strengths.
Right.
But also I do have some weakness.
Oh, absolutely. All of us do.
And I have some ugly. We don't go there. We don't go there. And we definitely don't go there in the D&I work. We definitely don't have any expectation that white people will go there. Like some things people are just mean. Right. Yeah, right? Like there's some ugly, but we don't ever really sit in that ugliness, both of ourselves and of others. Right. And so, yes, I want to understand everyone else's strengths, and I want to surround myself with people who have opposite strengths that address some of my weaknesses as I think about a team building. But I also, in order for I to get to know myself and others, need to know some ugly, and then we need to be able to sit with that and work on it as well, collectively, right?
Right.
And some of it shows up in different ways, and not that we would have therapy sessions all day at work,
right? But
we should be able to say, here's some things that I've noticed, and are you working with that? Here's some things this is some things I'm dealing with. Even as a leader, I'm dealing with these things, and this is how I'm working through that. And I may not show up on my best self on Monday, on Tuesday, or when you see me not working being my best self, let me know. Because these are things that I am currently actively working on. So this humility around our own whole humanity, I think we have lost a sense of naming it, because we have come to this world in this time is some like people are perfectionists, perfect. I'm like, no. And it's not just all my strengths. Let me tell you about my strengths. And tell you about my weaknesses, and I got some ugly.
Right.
And I have to hold all those things.
Right. I agree with that. That we absolutely have to be working on that. I think that's what you and I are committed to. That's why I'm committed to transparent communities where people can be empowered enough to give me feedback. I start by owning some of my mess and saying it, and then asking, are there other things like that I do that make it difficult for you? So I agree with you. We all have to continue to be growing.
But part of that strength myth is that you're in search of perfection.
Hmm.
So some of that strength base is worry about your strengths, don't worry about the weaknesses. You can erase some of those weaknesses if you get people around you, right? It's still seeking perfection.
Hmm.
It's still
Yeah.
trying to get to a place that we've created this perfect paradigm that doesn't exist.
Right.
Because people are messy.
Right. Right. I absolutely agree with that. That if strength finding is in search of perfection, that's not helpful to us. But if
But you should know them.
right, yeah, right. But if making sure that people are aligned and neatly fitted into the spaces that they're supposed to be, that for me is what I think my life is about, is identifying my purpose and trying to find out, there's an article that talks about the 6 reasons why people work. 3 of them drive up motivation and performance, 3 of them drive down. And I think that too often organizations have people stuck in places that are not the places for them. And that when they find themselves searching for someplace else, we shoo them out of that back into the place that we hired them to be in.
That's right. But we also do that. That's right. But we also do if Tommy didn't fit in this neat little thing and
Right.
what I was trying to build,
Right.
we disregard Tommy.
Right. Which is a mistake.
We don't see Tommy's humanity and say that Tommy may not fit in this. That might have something to do with me as a leader. So how am I? What is my role in putting Tommy in that position? We just discard Tommy because something has to be innately wrong with Tommy.
Right.
That's what we do in organizations.
Right.
Because they didn't neatly fit. Because we're always searching for perfection. The other thing is that if we're always looking in the humanist paradigm for this production up, production down, and looking at people from a commodity standpoint, then you cannot see their humanity.
Ooh.
You only see people from a commodity standpoint. Ooh. They no longer become human. They are objects.
To be traded and to add value or not. And but we don't even see each other as human anymore anyway. We don't talk about that part. I mean, we talk about the work, quote unquote, the work, and leave your humanity at the door, right? When you show up, don't bring that part here. We don't pay you to be a human. We've got work to do. So I am looking, how can people, I think we put up your information in the chat so that they can figure out how to connect with you. How can they get your book? Anything else? You've got the final word.
Yep. So please go to navigatingcourage.com. We're in the process of changing the website, but please go to navigatingcourage.com. My personal email is robin@navigate, courage, not the ing, just navigatecourage.com. Please reach out. We'd love. You can purchase a book on Amazon or purchase it on navigating.com. Look forward to discussing and having more conversations like this. So thank you.
Well, you're amazing. Thank you for saying yes to us. I want to say thank you to the community. I told you were in for a treat. Dr. Robin Martin is amazing. And now she's been unshackled to rise to a whole new level of impactfulness around the communities that she is a part of in this world that is in such desperate need for people being able to navigate courage. So thank you, and we'll see you for another conversation.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Bye now.